All right, guys. So here we have basic startup screen of Blender 2.8. Right here, you can see my version is 2.83.3. As long as you have above 2.81, everything should be the same. You can go and make sure in the blender.org page and just check out which is the latest version. You can just download it, update, and you'll be good to go. All right, so here you have the first screen. In your first screen, you'll have this little box here, which will give you the options to make new projects or recent files that you have already done before. You can also open, if you don't see it here, you can also go down here and open it or recover a last session. Quite useful, although you can also get it in other places, and we'll get there very soon. All right, so you can just click on the back, and your initial project is going to look like this. You're going to have a cube, a light source, and a camera. You can delete these and start from scratch, or you can use this setup and go from there, whatever makes you feel comfortable. For this particular course or class today, we're going to delete these guys right here and just stay with the cube for now. And today we're going to be talking about the interface of Blender 2.8 and the most used tools to model, sculpt, etc. Right? It's very cool software. For me, the best part is that it's free, and it's not one of those free softwares that you can't do anything if you don't pay. This is a fully professional suite, so you can do anything you see in other more professional softwares. You can do it here. Blender is an amazing tool, and this is like seriously my favorite software to use regarding 3D modeling. All right, so let's go dive right in here to start all the way here on the top. Here we have the File tab. Any file, you can open a new project, which you can choose from these options. And the cool thing about Blender is that they try to make this version 2.8 a very simple version where you can have everything that you need at hand and not have to be changing your layout and your tools and all that. So for example, let's go ahead and open a 2D animation one. I'm not going to save this. And right off the bat, because we're in 2D, we get this different layout, different tools. It's like different everything. And it's because this is set up mainly for doing 2D, which is like painting or drawing. So right now I have a pen right here. I can start drawing. I can change my brush, have different brushes. I have a very cool timeline down here, so we can do 2D animations. And as you can see, things change. And this whole layout is set up so you can create animations in 2D platform. Okay, so let's go back to general. All right, so we were here, new, and the same goes for sculpting, visual effects or video editing. Next, you got open. You can open a project. You'll see your projects on here, your documents, and your like computer folders. So you can just find here. You can also search within a folder or type the address up here. So you have open recent. Basically, is the most recent projects that you've worked on. You're gonna see them here. You might not see all of them, so sometimes you're gonna have to go and look and search for them. But the most recent ones are gonna be happening here. Sometimes if you're working on a single project with multiple files, I tend to open all of them and just have them here for quick reference. So recover, Blender 2.8 has an autosave kind of type thing, but it's not super constant. It happens every so often. So you really want to make the habit of saving every couple of minutes. You don't want to do something really cool and then Blender crashes because it's a software, it's a 3D software, it crashes, and you lost your process or your progress. Okay, so here is you get your kind of auto saves, sessions and whatnot. So you just click here, and if you by any chance lost something or messed up and you did not save, you can try to find previous version through here. You got your save, and one thing here is that you can see a little bit with low opacity here next to some of these is that these are shortcuts. And for those of you that don't know what a shortcut is it's like what we use keys, like keyboard keys, to achieve something without having to find it on the menu. So if I want to save, for example, let me go down here and enable something so you guys can see. Here we go. So now you can see down here what I do. So if I hold my control key and save, it's gonna bring up the save window. And you'll see down here, as soon as I press it, right, control save, it brings up my window. That's kind of what a shortcut is. So I can do multiple things, and you just, the things you use the most, you want to learn these shortcuts. It's not necessary. You can always come up here and just click save or do the same thing. But when you are working constantly, you'll end up learning some of these shortcuts, and it'll make your life a little bit easier. So save as works, and as if you want to save the project in a different file name. I use this to make versions. You also have save copy, which will save the same project, and I'll give it a name with a number, basically. So it just makes a copy, and just puts a name next to it, so you know it's a copy of the current project you're working on. And the other ones, you're barely gonna use them for what we do, but just so you know, the import is bringing in a model. You have to choose the format that your model is saved into, and then you just click on it, and then you'll have this window. So you can, just like the save window, you search for your model and you bring it in Blender. And what we're gonna use is exporting, so we can get our Blender objects and characters into Unity. We're gonna be exporting in FBX. It's one of the most common formats used in gaming industry, and that's the one we're gonna be using in our course. All right, so let's get down to edit. Edit, the important part about edit here is you got undo, which the shortcut is holding control and the Z key, and hitting the Z key. You don't have to hold it, just hold control and just hit the Z key. You have your undo history. When you do different things, you might wanna just go back to a specific point and not have to control Z all the time. So here you can just go and take, okay, so now I'm back to your original. So that's what history does. If you do a lot of things, you're gonna see multiple steps on the undo history. Down here, I'm gonna get to lock objects later on, but it's not important as of is, so no worries about that. But we'll be on checking this when we're gonna be working on rigging and some weight paints. We got preferences. So here, when you get an add-on or you want to change something up the UI, this is where you get it. So an add-on is basically a system that has been created by someone. Because Blender is an open source software, people can create things for Blender. So an add-on is something that is built to facilitate or make a task easier for doing certain things. So I have here multiple add-ons, and Blender itself comes with multiple add-ons. We might be enabling a couple of them. In your case, for example, let's just try it out. Type here, loop, and you'll get this mesh loop tools. You wanna click on it, and it's going to tell you where it's going to be set up. The tab category is going to be named. Actually, it's kind of cool. We can rename it to World. Okay. You can rename it or just leave it as edit, however you prefer. And you're going to see that if you hit your end key, you're going to have this pop up right here. And your loop tools are going to be around somewhere here. So basically, this is where your add-ons are going to be happening. So just make sure you have your loop tool set up. We're going to use that later on. You don't have to do it right now, but just so you remember. Again, add-ons, you can install them here if you have an external one, but just type loop and it will be disabled. Boom, just enable it, refresh it. And sometimes you don't have this set up here, the autosave. You scroll down here, make sure you click your autosave preferences. So all the things that you do are saved. Okay? Perfect stuff. All right, so moving on. Render. Render is taking an image, recording a video, or audio. Basically, when you have a camera set up, and let's say I have my cube here, and I want to take a picture of it, I'll go and do either F12 or render image on here, and boom, you got an image of your cube or whatever you're working on. This is how you set up the nice scenes and images you see of games and whatnot. The characters look very nice and crisp, and that's because they are rendered in a high quality image. So that's what you get here. You can render animations and audio, etc. Window. The main thing you might want to use in Window, and this is because if you have multiple screens, you can open a new window and you get an entirely new Blender window here. And the cool part is that it's literally the same project. It's attached to the same project. So if I grab my cube here, you see you grab it here, and I can move it and it will happen in both. And the cool part about this is that I can have multiple views and multiple options here happening, still working on the same project. So if you have multiple screens, you can have multiple Blender windows open, and you can have a lot more versatility to what you're doing in the moment. So that's it for Windows. You're not going to use a lot of it. Save screenshot's kind of cool. You can just take a snapshot of what you're doing currently. And help. You got your manual, tutorial, support, and all these things that you can use here. If you like coding, Python is the code used for Blender. You can create your own systems using Blender API. And this is where you'll be learning how to do that. I suggest for those of you who don't know what Discord is, it's a social platform for gamers mostly, and there is a lot of groups that have to do with 3D modeling and the Blender software. So if you make an account and you can search for certain groups in there, you're gonna find a lot of people and a lot of communities that are super helpful. They're gonna love helping you learn how to use Blender and answer any questions that you have. Okay, so let's continue. Let's go to these other tabs down here, and this is one of the coolest thing that Blender 2.8 brought to the table, is that they created what they call Workspaces, and it's like I showed you when we opened the 2D project. Everything changed into what you would need to create a 2D, animation or artwork. And this is exactly what it happens here. So right now we're in the layout. This is the common one, standard. You can double click on it and say you want to call it general view or something. You can change the name however you prefer. Let's just leave it layout. It's changed to modeling. Modeling changes your tools, changes your options. So down here, you see in layout, we are in object mode. But when we change to modeling, it changes your mode to edit mode. Edit mode means we are able to modify the object. And the object, we call it mesh. So if I click on it, I can just pull things. I can create loops. I can add parts. Things that I cannot do in object mode. Object mode is mainly to move and, like it's called here, to set up a layout. Let's go to modeling. And in modeling, you have multiple tools here, and most of these will have shortcuts. Again, you don't need to know the shortcuts. Tools are right there. It's super easy to reach them. But if you use a tool often, you'll learn the shortcut eventually. And I'll have a sheet for you guys that you can study and try out all the different shortcuts. And that's gonna give you a little bit of an edge, be a little bit quicker. So for example, I have here this tool right here. It's called extrude region. So I can extrude a part. Extrude means copy the face and pull out and create the same amount of mesh, or what it's called geometry, and create like an extruded copy. So let's say I don't have that tool selected. I have a shortcut for it, which is the key E. So if I hit E, you'll see has that line right there telling me the direction where I'm pulling. I'm extruding just by pressing the E key. I'm extruding, and that's a shortcut. So again, you can use here. You can extrude, or you can just hit E. That's basically how it works. So all these tools, they have different things that you'll do with them. And the cool thing about this is that you really want to try to test all of them and just play with them. And it's really cool when you play with them and you get the weirdest things, okay? So that's for modeling. Now let's go up to sculpting. Okay, so in sculpting, again, all my tools changed, right? Now we have a bunch of sculpting brushes. It's really cool. And you have certain options here, and on this side, which is your editor kind of area, or your properties. This is where you get your properties and all the different options for tools and your scenes and materials and whatnot. But in this case, we have now here a new set of options, and these are for the brushes. So when you change your brush, you get a bunch of options for just creating the radius. For example, radius is the size of your brush. You make it smaller, make it larger, right? As you can see, if you can notice, on top of here, whenever I move it, it changes. That's the same option. So you have multiple places that you can actually mess up or mess with the different options you have for your brushes. So your strength is the power, how powerful it is. How much power does it have? Try to use that to lower your strength. It won't do much. So if I pull my strength up, it'll do a lot more. It'll be more powerful. And size, bigger, it'll cover more grounds. And let's do on the history. You see all the different brushes I just hit, right? All this click is if I click the last one, boom, I go back almost to the first time I clicked the brush. Okay, so basically what you need to know from sculpting on the layout is that you have radius, you got your strength for your brushes. These are your different brushes. You can just play around with them, see what they do. And when we get to the point of sculpting, I'll give you all the information you need so you can make super nice, interesting sculpts. Let's move on to UV editing. UV basically is you want to put a texture onto your model. You want to paint it. You want to give it the colors and all that. So the way computers work is that they need to see the 3D object in a flat plane. They need to see it as a paper so they can lay out the texture onto it. So right here, you see this, I have this box selected right here, and you have this kind of same shape set up here. What it's doing, and this particular event, if I hit all of it, you're gonna see it's kind of like a flat paper cut into parts. But in this case, it's not gonna be working kind of the best way, just because there's curves and there's a lot of geometry that is not set up. So if I kind of wrap it, then this is what you're gonna get of the cube. But let's go and actually just delete this guy and create an actual cube again. And then this is what we got. So we got our 6 sides. And if I pick one of the sides, I'll get the UV selection of that area into this map. See? So if I select all these, you're gonna see them popping up here. So this is like we cut the box into, we made like little cuts and we opened the box flat on the floor. That's basically what a UV is. And you have certain tools to deal with the UV so you can align and whatnot. You can create new images for your UV that to bring up textures. For example, in this case here, you can bring up textures, or you can create new ones, import from your folders, etc. So this is what you will deal with that. It changes you to edit mode, so you can create the seams, and you can create the UV maps. You can make the cuts where you need them to, or modify and all of that. Okay, so moving on to texture. Texturing, this is where you basically paint. This is where you basically kind of set up your how your mesh is gonna look. So just for the sake of showing you guys, I'm gonna go ahead and jump here to shading and create a material here. And what I'm doing is giving it information of what is supposed to happen for the cube. So in this case, I'm gonna tell the cube to use a texture. It's gonna be an image texture. And don't worry about this, we're gonna have a course about this specifically, but I'm just gonna create one for testing. So I can show you how this works. And now you see that my cube has color, has a texture onto it. Let's go back here. So now that we set up that, you see that in my texture paint tab, I have the image. The image that I put there is set up. See that? Pretty cool. Now let's go back to UV editing, and I'll find my texture, my testing image here, and you'll see that if I grab this cube, it's gonna show what's gonna be there. See, D4, and let's say I wanna rotate this. You see, it rotates in the cube. I can just go like this and rotate it. I can move it. So that's what a UV map does. It creates a layout of your flattened object and lets you assign textures to it in a logical way. Okay? Let's go back to painting. Painting, so let's say I have here a brush. It's called black. Let's make another coarse red. And if I go ahead and start painting on top of it, I'm going to see it pop up here. And it's kind of very light. So like we learned in the sculpting one, we have radius and strength. We have the same thing for textures. Let's put up our string all the way up, and then boom. It's very noticeable. Like now it's super red, and we can let's do another blue, let's cross it, and boom. We paint on our object. we can also go ahead and paint on our actual object right here. So in texture, and you see it's going to be updating on the UV map. So if I go and make all the corners, for example, down here, you'll see it'll kind of paint the box that we're using. Only it will paint on the box because it's the UV map. You see the UV map happening around there? That's how it works. So if I can paint outside the UV map here, but I cannot paint outside the UV map when I'm painting the object because that's the only thing that's being detected or rendered in this case. Awesome. So let's go ahead and go back and kind of try to delete all of these like I did. So one thing I want to show you is that when you have a UV map, you see all these boxes and letters and all those colors. This is an image used for testing if your UV is working fine. We're going to have a class on this when we're going to do the texture and all that, but just I want to show you what happens when you don't have your UV correct. And you'll see that this area got all stretched out. And you don't want that happening because if you have a texture, then everything's going to be all stretched out. And that's why we use this kind of cubed texture, and just so you can make sure that your UV is correct. All right, cool. So let's undo that. Go to shading. Shading, this is like its own monster, but it's very cool. Shading is where you create effects and textures and super cool visual things like fire and all of those things. You can do multiple stuff with UV, with the shading, and you first start having just like if you go down here in your properties, you'll have your material down here. Just create with a plus, and you delete with a minus. But we'll have again a class for this. Basically, what you do, you have a material, and your material is going to have the option to use nodes. Nodes is like a visual way to code texture, to code how the computer understands the visual part that you want to show off. So you can turn it on or off. So here, you'll see that here's check mark. Yeah, it does the same thing. So we'll basically use this. It's one of the coolest new things that Blender brought to the table. It makes a lot of things easier. But for example, you can Shift A, which is how you create new things. And let's say I want to use a brick texture. Bring it down here. Let's plug it there. And you see what happened is you just brought a bunch of bricks into it. And you'll be able to modify them, do different things to it, just based on parameters that you choose here. So basically, this is what it does, and you can just merge them all together. You can create multiple options. See, I just dropped my testing image into one of the options here, and it gave me this kind of brick texture to mix with it. And you can do such a lot of cool stuff with shading. We're going to have a little bit on it. Not a lot, because this is a very, very large part of 3D modeling, but we're gonna go into the basics so you can create basic texturing and get your character or object into your game looking very, very nice. Okay, so let's head out to animation. Animation, it's what it is. This is where you are going to animate your object or character, and it's super simple tools. It just takes a little bit to get used to and understand. We are not gonna do animation in this course, but we are going to explore a little bit on how to create specific little tiny animations to bring into Unity. For example, a chest that you can open. So just to show you how it works, here you have a timeline, which is basically where you point out what's going to happen each second of the animation. So start here. Let's create a location key. Now, this is telling the computer or the software to mark the location. If you press the I key, you're going to bring up the insert keyframe menu. And you have all these available options to save either the scale, the rotation, the location, the delta location, and a lot of different ones that you are going to learn eventually. But for example, you use location, rotation, and scale, and you save all of it how it is right now. And let's say I'm going to move my time towards here, and I'm going to move my cube up. I'm going to rotate it like this, and I want to actually scale it a little bit, make it smaller. Now I'm going to hit my I key and save the location, rotation, and scale. And when I move this back, you're going to see it's going to kind of return to what I already saved, the location, rotation, and scale initially. So if I press the play key, it's going to move towards what I saved. See how cool is that? It's kind of a simple, simple mechanics. It just takes a little bit of practice to understand how to move things and whatnot. But this is how animation works. And then you just go here, and what you do, you render the animation. When you render the animation, you're going to have a clip that you can save and send to your friends and show off in social media, or your parents, or, or your friends. Cool. So let's move here to rendering. Rendering is the image or the video that comes up when you render, basically. Not a lot to do here. This is basically just you have this asterisk up here, means that the image is not saved. You're going to see that here in UV editing as well. This is the image is not saved. You're going to have the asterisk when you save it. It'll go away. Same as for texture. When you save it, it'll go away. Okay? So that means it's not saved. Just to keep a lookout for that. Compositing. We're not going to be using this. This is for creating the scenes and movies and, certain things in Blender. But we're not going to use this for gaming. As if but you can create all those in the game engine of Unity. But compositing, if you want to dive a little bit more into what it is to create movies and stuff in Blender, this is where you're going to be using them. You have nodes and you create renders and all that. It's pretty cool as well. Scripting, as I said, Blender is open source system, and you can create things for it, and you can code yourself for whatever you really want to do in Blender. And this is where you would do it. You would create and start typing here. This is like a text editor. You create a new one and you start typing your stuff in here, and then you'll be able to test it out and have it work here. Okay? So like this. Perfect. So we went all through this. So, and if you want to add new tabs, you click the plus tab here, and you'll have all the tabs that you might need are gonna be here, and you can just boom, just add it right there. You can right click on it, you can duplicate, delete it, or just move it back, forth, etc. Okay, so I want to go over a little bit of the other parts before we finish. We're almost there, but let's talk about this right here. So this right here, this is the rendering menu. You can have multiple options to see your workflow. So the main one we're going to be using, this one right here, this is a viewport shading of the solid material. It doesn't have color or anything. If I move to this one, this is the material rendering, and you'll see that it has a material on it, and you can still modify and do stuff to it, and you'll see how the material is going to be changing and whatnot. The last one is the render. This is how it looks when you hit this right here. So you'll have your light source. You'll have your light source being shown. You can move it around. You'll see how light reacts on the on the object or not. But if you are not in the render, the light is not gonna do anything. Same is here. Okay, so this is where you check your render modes. You have this one, which is pretty cool. This is wireframe. This is to see kind of just the edges of the object. You can also do transparent by toggling this one right here is the button. It's called X-ray. You can see through it, which is pretty nifty because you can, for example, do things like these. And you can see inside of it, as well as X-ray. You can see inside of it. Here it's just you can see the solid part a little bit, and it gives you that kind of X-ray feel. Turn it off. You can turn it on and off. All right. Here you got other options. We'll go through them when we're gonna need them. Not right now. And these options right here. These are how you manage your selection. So you can select from within the center. You can select the active element, which means, for example, let's go here and have this kind of dots called vertices. You have everything's connected by vertices. The line is called an edge, and the whole part is called a face. So let's go to vertices and have this. And if I have active element selected, whatever I do is going to be based on the elements that I have selected. If I have medium point, it's going to go towards the center. If I have individual origins, each part of it is going to work on its own. It's going to do things on its own because it's individual. So each one is going to go towards its own center, basically. 3D cursor, you see the 3D cursor here. If I start to scale it down, it's going to go all the way to a 3D cursor. So basically, this means that everything's going to center around the 3D cursor, which is this little red dash kind of line with the cross on it. And you'll see it here. This is 3D cursor. You can move it around. By selecting here, you can move your 3D cursor easily. Okay, so this is what it means is just how you deal with your selected object. We'll go in a little bit more in depth when we're going to use this area, but this is where you find that. Okay, so this tab right here is gonna give you kind of what these guys give you. So if you wanna do edit mode, it'll change here. Instead of you having to go to modeling, you can just go to, you can stay in the layout, for example, and just change to edit. And your tools are going to change. If you change to sculpt mode, the tools are going to change. Vertex and all these are different tools. The thing about the scope, the tabs right here, the workspace, is that your layout is going to change as well. As if you change here, your layout is going to stay the same. Okay, so the whole idea of using these guys on top of here is that it's going to give you extra windows. It's going to give you extra settings that you would otherwise need to set up yourself. Okay, now over here on this side, we have what it's called the scene. This is the scene hierarchy, and this is where all your objects are located. You got your light, your camera, and the cube. This is where you can rename the cube and say, let's call it a bathtub. And let's turn it into a bathtub. There, we have a bathtub. Pretty cool. So this, you double click on it, you change the name. Double click on it on the camera, you can name camera front. And if you have multiple cameras, you can call the light sun. And this is where you set up all of your structure. So as you can notice, everything's inside what is called a collection. You can rename the collection also and call it bathroom. And inside here, this is to keep things organized. So you can right click on the empty area, and you can create a new collection. You create a new collection, can rename that collection to say living room. And when you create a new object, it's gonna go into the selected collection. Select the bathroom, create a new object, and you'll see the cube is going into the selected collection. So this is a way for you to keep things organized. You can turn the collections off, just work on one specific collection. This is very cool. It makes things super easy to work with. Okay, so let's delete that extra cube right there. And last but not least is what we've been using a little bit. This is the properties panel. And every time you move across certain of the workspaces and you select different objects, your options are going to change. Okay, so sometimes you'll have different tools on here depending on the object that you selected. And here we have multiple things. We're not gonna use them all, but just so you understand, we have things like are called like modifiers. Modifiers are like let's call them spells. It's a spell that you throw on your object and it has an effect on it. For example, let's throw this spell of subdivision surface, and look what happened. So what happened is that it broke into more parts. I can add it, give it more parts, and it'll smooth it out. Look at that. It looks like a very smooth kind of bathtub now. I can turn it off, turn it on. And this is what it's called a non-destructive workflow. When you do modifiers, unless you apply them, you can do modifications. You can spell your object or character into certain things, and you can always go back and it's not destroying it. It's not applied. So this is a non-destructive way to create certain aspects of your mesh or modify them. I could initially kind of do this by doing it in a destructive way. If I select my object and I start subdividing it and start adding, you see there? But the thing is, after I do this, I cannot go back to it unless I Control Z. And sometimes you do these certain things and then you can't go back because it's been a long time. So you want to use the modifiers, or I call them spells, to do non-destructive changes to your object or character. We're gonna use what I call here is like the vertex or shape keys and normals. These are pretty cool stuff that are gonna give a nice feel to what you're working on. See here, for example, I put it smooth. I want it to look smooth and nice, not kind of cubic. So I shaded smooth, and here with this kind of just one check mark, go boom. And now it looks smoother than it was, just a little bit, but it gives you that nice flow. So this is things that you're gonna find in your properties. Same for the textures and the materials and all those really cool parts. Okay, so this is basically the real basic core of the UI and the basic tools of Blender. We're gonna go ahead in the next class and work on what we call a hard surface object, which means that it's not organic. It's not a living thing. So hard surfaces usually are like chests for fantasy games, or weapons, or a house, or a robot. Those are things that are hard surfaces. You know, it's like a surface that is really hard, strong. So we're going to be working on a hard surface object on the next class, and we're going to learn mostly, we're going to be working mostly inside here creating that hard surface, and we're going to set it up. We're going to give it a little bit of texture. We're going to let it a little bit of UV editing and painting, and set that up in Unity as an object. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to drop it in the comments. I'll get back to you real soon. And if you need a one-on-one, we can always talk about it. And, happy blending. Just take what you learned today, pause the video, test it out, and try all the tools. And this is about practice. Well, 3D modeling is about practice. It's about experimenting. It's about not being afraid of what you can achieve by just testing things out. And remember to just save your project, hit that Control S every couple of minutes, and you can always go back. If you mess something up, just go back to it and make different copies on your file tab, save as, or save a copy. Okay, so until next time, thank you so much for being in this course. I'm really happy to be able to give you all the knowledge that I've acquired throughout the years of 3D modeling for games. All right, see you guys. Take care.